This video is for commentary and analysis under fair use. The views expressed are my own, based on publicly available information and my interpretation of it.
Taylor Parker's case is usually framed as a story about maternal instinct, but I think that frame is too small. Before the murder, Taylor had already built a false reality around pregnancy, inheritance, family conflict, and a future that never existed. This wasn't just a pregnancy hoax. It was deception used as control. Hi, this is Stina. Welcome back to Motive and Method. If you're new here, I approach true crime from a communication and framing lens. I look at language, patterns, narratives, and the way people create meaning around a case. I'm not a psychologist, and I'm not here to diagnose Taylor Parker or anyone else involved. What I want to look at in this video is the structure of the deception. Taylor Parker's case is usually framed as a story about maternal instinct. At least that's what the Netflix documentary is called. A woman wanted a baby, faked a pregnancy, murdered Reagan Hancock, and tried to pass Reagan's baby off as her own. When I look at how this unfolded before the murder, I see something much broader. I see a control system. And I think that matters because when coercive control is usually discussed, it is often discussed in the context of domestic abuse, where the perpetrator is male, the victim is female, and the control may include threats, intimidation, surveillance, isolation, physical violence, or the constant fear of what will happen if the victim does not comply. That form of coercive control is very real, and it is very important as well. But it is not the only way control can operate. Control does not always look like someone standing over another person, threatening them or physically blocking the door. Sometimes control happens through confusion, through urgency, emotional whiplash, through making someone doubt the people who are warning them, through creating crisis after crisis until the other person is always reacting instead of thinking clearly. So, that is the lens I want to use with Taylor Parker. And not because it removes responsibility from her, it absolutely does not, but because if we only call this a pregnancy hoax, we miss how the lie worked on the people around her. So, let's start with the beginning of the relationship. Taylor Parker and Wade Griffin began dating in July of 2019. But according to reporting, the relationship did not begin purely as romance. Taylor first approached Wade with a business opportunity, hiring him for roughly $50,000 of land clearing and fencing work on what she described as family property. Then the job was canceled, with Taylor blaming her mother. So, from the beginning, the relationship already had two major ingredients that would keep repeating: family money and family interference. Then, just weeks after they started dating, Taylor told Wade she was pregnant with twins. Shortly after that, she claimed she had lost the babies in a freak accident. That set a pattern that repeated and escalated into the more sustained 2020 pregnancy deception. Because before the 2020 fake pregnancy, the one that eventually led to Reagan Hancock being targeted, pregnancy had already entered the relationship as a crisis. It wasn't just a claim. It gave both of them roles. Taylor became the woman carrying Wade's children. Wade became the expectant father. Then he became the man supporting her through a loss. That is a lot of emotional intensity very early in a relationship. And when that much happens up front, it can knock a person off balance. At that point, you're not just casually getting to know someone anymore. You have already been through a crisis together, or at least that is what you believe. So when people ask how Wade could get pulled into Taylor's later stories, I think we have to look at the pace of the relationship. This was not just one strange claim sitting by itself. The first business story was followed by rapid emotional and romantic involvement. Then the twins' pregnancy claim. Then the claimed loss. Then more drama. then moving in, and by early 2020, the second pregnancy claim. So Wade was not simply being asked to evaluate one isolated lie. He was being pulled through a sequence of promises, crises, losses, explanations, and new developments. That is emotional whiplash. And emotional whiplash matters because when someone is constantly reacting to the next crisis, they may not have the space to step back and ask, wait, does this actually make any sense? This was not one clean lie. It was a pileup. And in that pileup, Taylor controlled the traffic. One of the biggest pieces of that pileup was the ranch. Taylor allegedly told Wade and people around him that she came from serious family money. There were claims about inheritance, land, oil, and gas royalties, and millions of dollars. At one point, that future included a ranch for Wade. But based on the reporting, she did not actually buy the ranch. The realtors needed to verify that she was a serious buyer, but the money kept failing to appear. There were excuses about why the funds were delayed, and the deal eventually fell through. That is important because the ranch was not something Taylor delivered. It was something she dangled. A baby, a ranch, money coming, a family future, a whole new life. That is future faking. Future faking is when someone creates a vivid picture of the future in order to secure loyalty, patience, and emotional investment in the present. Wade wasn't just passively swept along. Testimony showed he was drawn to the financial promises and eagerly participated in the ranch deal. Future faking works best when it aligns with someone's own hopes and incentives. It is not just trust me. It is trust me because look where we are going. And if the future is powerful enough, people may tolerate a lot of confusion on the way there. The money is delayed. The paperwork is complicated. The family is fighting. Her mother is interfering. The deal is still coming. There is always another reason the promised future has not arrived yet. But the dream stays alive. And that dream does emotional work. It not only gives Wade something to wait for, it gives Taylor a reason to keep asking for belief. It gives every delay a context. And it makes anyone questioning the whole thing look like they are not just questioning Taylor, they are threatening the future. And so this is where framing becomes so important to this case. Taylor was not simply presenting herself as a girlfriend with strange stories. She was presenting herself as pregnant, wealthy, vulnerable, mistreated, and building a future with Wade. That combination is powerful. If she is pregnant, she is protected. If she is vulnerable, questioning her feels cruel. If she is wealthy, the ranch dream seems possible. If she is mistreated, she becomes sympathetic. And if her mother is framed as the enemy, then warnings from her mother can be dismissed before they are even fully heard. That is one way deception becomes control. You do not only lie about the facts, you teach people how to interpret the people who challenge your facts. So, when the money did not arrive, it was not because Taylor was lying, God forbid. It was because her mother was blocking it. And when someone questioned the pregnancy, it was not because they saw something real, it was because they were interfering. When Wade's mother had concerns, Taylor could say Connie, his mother, did not want them to be happy. The frame protected the lie. And one of the clearest moments where the lie starts to crack comes through Stephanie Ott. Stephanie was connected to Taylor through Wade's circle, and she offered to help with a gender reveal in March of 2020. Taylor sent her what was supposed to be documentation from the Northeast Texas Women's Clinic showing the gender of the baby. But Stephanie noticed something strange. The date on the document was from 2016. That is a real problem when someone is claiming to be pregnant in 2020, so Stephanie questioned it. Taylor reportedly said she would call her doctor and then very quickly came back with an explanation. She told Stephanie that there had supposedly been a large number of misprints that day, and the clinic was going to send a corrected version. That moment is small, but it shows the mechanism. A contradiction appears, and Taylor explains it away quickly enough to keep the story moving. The explanation does not have to be airtight. It only has to create enough fog to slow people down. Stephanie still felt something was wrong. She reportedly called the lab herself and was told they do not send things like that. Then she contacted the women's clinic. The office manager could not disclose Taylor's private medical information due to HIPAA laws, but according to Stephanie, she told her to go with her gut. That tells us something important. People were seeing the cracks. This was not a case where everyone was blindly fooled. Stephanie was paying attention. Wade's mother had concerns. Others had heard or knew that Taylor could not be pregnant. But the truth was fragmented. One person had one piece. Someone else had another. Medical privacy limited what could be said, and Taylor always seemed to have another counter. That is how the lie kept moving. As things heated up, Stephanie shared her concerns with Wade's mother, Connie Griffin. Connie had questions too, but she also saw how convincing the public performance looked. For instance, Taylor's father was at the gender reveal. Taylor's kids were there, kids from other relationships. Other people were participating. And that creates social proof. If enough people are acting like something is real, it becomes harder to be the one person saying, "Wait, is this real?" Connie said she would put questions in Wade's mind. She would talk to him about her doubts. Wade would take those questions to Taylor, and Taylor, of course, would counter them. Connie described it as a tug of war. That phrase is perfect because Wade was not just weighing evidence like a detective. He was caught between relationships. His mother had concerns. Taylor had explanations. Other people were warning him. Taylor was telling him those people were against them. So the question stops being only, is Taylor pregnant? It becomes, who do you trust? That is one of the most dangerous shifts in a deceptive relationship. A factual question turns into a loyalty test. Instead of, can we verify this? It becomes, why don't you believe me? Putting the blame back on Wade. Instead of, your mother is worried, it becomes, your mother does not want us to be happy. Instead of, Stephanie found something concerning, it becomes, people are trying to ruin this for us. That is not just lying. That is emotional leverage. Taylor also created the appearance of evidence. According to court records and reporting, she used a silicone belly, pregnant belly, and an ultrasound purchased online. There were maternity photos, social media posts, baby updates, and the gender reveal. I would call that evidence theater. She did not just tell people she was pregnant. She staged pregnancy. And people are much more likely to believe what they think they have seen. An ultrasound feels like proof, and so does a pregnant belly that some people said they touched and they swore that they could feel the baby moving. Also, the gender reveal feels like proof. You'd think, who does that? If they're faking a pregnancy, it wouldn't even come into your mind. Maternity photos, like who would go around wearing maternity clothes if they weren't really pregnant? Social media makes the whole thing feel public and therefore real. But those things were manufactured. And the props did not have to answer every question. They only had to make doubt feel uncomfortable. Most people do not want or even think of accusing a woman of faking a pregnancy. It feels invasive. It feels cruel and socially risky even. So the performance protects itself, not because it is perfect, but because questioning it comes with a cost. There was also the issue of access. Wade said that during that summer, their time together was very limited. Taylor did not really want him to see her naked because she said she was insecure about stretch marks and changes to her body. So in a normal pregnancy, that could sound completely understandable. But in this context, it also functioned as a barrier. Wade could not directly verify what was happening physically, and because Taylor framed it as vulnerability, pushing for more access could make him feel insensitive, cruel even. That explanation did emotional work. It gave Taylor privacy around the very thing that could expose the lie. Another disturbing part of this case is that some people did know that Taylor could not become pregnant. Dr. Christopher Mason, the OB/GYN who had treated Taylor, knew her medical history. He reportedly saw social media posts about the pregnancy and knew it was not possible. But because of privacy laws, he could not simply announce that publicly. He did alert the hospital to take extra precautions with babies in the nursery. That detail is chilling in hindsight, because the concern was not simply Taylor is lying. It was, if Taylor is lying about being pregnant, at some point she may need to produce a baby. But knowing the truth and being able to stop the lie are not the same thing. That is one of the hardest parts of this case. Truth, concern, suspicion, they all existed, but none of it broke through in time. So let's talk about the lie, the big lie about the pregnancy. The problem with that is that, pregnancy has a deadline. A fake inheritance can be delayed almost forever. The money is tied up, family is fighting, the paperwork is complicated, yada, yada, yada. But pregnancy has a clock. Eventually, there has to be a baby. Connie Griffin, Wade's mother, thought Taylor would eventually have to fake a miscarriage because that would have been an exit from the lie. Still manipulative and cruel, but an exit nonetheless. Taylor did not take that exit. On October 9, 2020, Taylor Parker went to the home of Reagan Simmons Hancock. Reagan was 21 years old, pregnant with her daughter Braxlyn Sage, and she also had a young daughter at home. Taylor killed Reagan and cut Braxlyn from her womb, then tried to pass the baby off as her own. She was later pulled over while driving erratically and claimed she had just delivered the baby herself. At the hospital, doctors determined she had not given birth. The lie collapsed quickly, but by then, Reagan Simmons Hancock and Braxlyn Sage were gone. Before the murder, Taylor Parker had spent months building a false reality. That is why I see coercive control here. Not necessarily in the stereotypical way people picture it, but in the way Taylor used deception, crisis, future promises, and emotional confusion to keep people inside her version of reality. She controlled the frame, the evidence, access. She controlled emotion, and when doubt appeared, she worked to control that too. And she was really fast with her lies. This was not only a lie about pregnancy, it was a lie big enough to become the world other people were trying to navigate. So, in this first video, I wanted to lay out the structure, because if we only ask how could someone fake a pregnancy, we miss a bigger question. How did the fake pregnancy become part of the whole reality? How did people see the cracks and still not stop the system? How did reasonable doubt become family conflict? And how did warnings get reframed as sabotage? In part 2, I want to look more closely at how this worked on Wade Griffin and the people around him. Because once you understand the structure, the next question is, how did it keep working? That is where we get into future faking, gaslighting, triangulation, victim playing, and the way Taylor Parker turned doubt into disloyalty. Because this case was not only about a fake pregnancy, it was about what happens when a lie becomes the world everyone else is forced to navigate. Thank you for watching today, and I'll see you in the next video.
Go deeper with motive and method. Join the channel for member perks plus behind-the-scenes updates. Link in description.